Well, forecasters usually track the weather, but in part 2 of our aviation series, Chief Meteorologist Scott Sincoff explains how pilots literally put their heads in the clouds.
Flying has its ups and downs, but before you leave the terminal, things need to be smooth sailing to soar into the friendly skies. When preparing for takeoff, Fairmont State University flight instructor Kevin Webb says that a pilot must have their checklist to ensure that they are good to go.
Just as an aid there to the pilots to help them make sure that they're covering every item that needs to be fulfilled to successfully complete the flight.
Our circuit breakers, we verify that they are all pushed in.
Once everything is checked and the passengers are buckled, it's time to taxi onto the runway and take flight into the headwind. Webb says that following the wind direction and keeping an eye on the weather is important as you ascend to thousands of feet into the air where the land below looks small. However, all good things must come to an end.
Falcon 1, we'll see you in a bit.
In helicopters.
When you're 3,500 feet up in the air like we are right now, you have to talk to air traffic control to get the clearance to land back into the airport.
Falcon 1, contact tower 126.7.
Over to Tower 267, Falcon 1, good day.
Now that we have the go-ahead, we start our way back down to the surface, but how does the descent occur?
Reducing throttle and reducing our angle of attack, or our pitch, so putting the nose down. By reducing throttle, we're reducing our thrust on the plane,
which then produces less lift onto the aircraft as its weight helps the plane ready to land. Once on the ground, the plane taxis to the hangar before it once again takes flight. Reporting from Bridgeport, I'm Scott Sincoff.
Flooding occurs consistently during the summer months in the Mountain State, but as West Virginia Tonight's Scott Sincoff explains, one recent event seemed to overwhelm one Preston County town.
Heavy rains from the remnants of Hurricane Ida ravaged many communities across the Mountain State on September 1st, 2021. But some 3 weeks later, the community of Tunnelton and Tunnelton Quick Stop owner Dave Biggins are still cleaning up the mess along Route 26.
We get floods quite often here, 2-3 a year, but they normally get to about this level. And this time the water got 2 foot deeper, which got completely up in our store. And that morning, it was probably 18 inches deep, at least up to my knees.
Between the product loss and the building repairs, Biggins is looking at an estimated nearly $50,000 in damage, and that's hoping that another flood doesn't fill up the drain and surround a culvert behind his store.
We live in a bowl, kinda. There's an old mine on the hill, and there's other things that cause the water to flow down here.
Usually everything on this side of town and probably anything up that way on this side of the road comes into this drain.
The culvert that's only about 20 inches wide just can't handle another heavy rainstorm like the half-foot of rain that came down at the beginning of the month. The rain came down so hard, so fast, and filled up this entire culvert higher than I am tall. That's over 7 feet. You could see this in the water line, and some residents of Tunnelton are saying that this is as bad or worse than the flood of 1985. Prentice Taylor of Tunnelton's sewer department says, though, that hope is on the way. The town of Tunnelton is working on getting funds to temporarily fix drains by the underpass, which goes down the middle of Route 26, before permanent help comes from the DOH.
To try to figure out how soon we can get the project coming through that they have already scheduled for fiscal year 2023.
The scheduled 5-foot culvert should take care of it, but potential downpours in the future may not make that enough to control the consistent flooding.
That's not going to help me in the meanwhile. This flood could happen again tomorrow or anytime it rains.
Reporting in Tunnelton, Preston County, I'm Scott Sincoff.
With the Winter Games about halfway over, there are plenty more opportunities for you to try out an Olympic sport right here at home.
We're talking about curling here. West Virginia Tonight's Scott Sincoff has the details.
As the Winter Games continue, amateur and seasoned cross-country skiers head to Whitegrass in Canaan Valley to pretend that they are in Beijing, competing for the gold medal in one of the many forms of the sport.
So I think most people know about the traditional cross-country skis that you see people going over through woods and across fields. There are also telemark skiing, which you see a lot at the downhill ski areas, and then skate skiing, which is a really fast and dynamic kind of skating with these long, stiff skis that's really popular and very exciting to watch in the Olympics.
But before you go for the gold, you need to know the basics.
So I said, this is like ice skating through the woods. Instead of being on a pond, you just go wherever you want. And it's kind of like ice skating and skiing at the same time.
You start off by getting your equipment, plenty of snow to enjoy the sport, and don't forget about the boots, bindings, skis, and poles.
The gear is very lightweight, but it's meant to allow a person to be able to move down and move across the terrain.
You start off standing with your feet at shoulder width apart and bend slightly at the hips, knees, and ankles with your hands in front of you. Then walk using your skis on a flat surface and make a stride in a straight line. When you feel comfortable, get the hang of it and go for a stride and glide. It takes time to get the hang of it, and sometimes
that's it. Push the toes together, heels apart.
You fall, and that's okay. It's all part of that Olympic journey and starts at the very beginning.
I think the best thing to always do is to take a lesson. It doesn't cost that much, it doesn't take that long, but you learn the basics, you learn what you should be doing, what you should be shying away from, and in no time we can have you down the track, and my students are just waving goodbye to me, which makes me really happy.
Even after learning the basics of cross-country skiing, the most important thing about this Nordic winter sport is having fun. Reporting in Canaan Valley, I'm Scott Sincoff.